There we go. There we go.
Hi, this is.
Yo, what's good, bro?
What's up, Michael?
What's good?
Alexa, stop. What's good, bro?
Are you in? What city you in?
I'm in Houston.
For real? Oh, you got your own place?
Yeah,
Dang.
yeah, yeah. Me and my girl.
What's
You
that
started school?
Huh?
You started school
Yeah, I've been started.
in
Late
August?
August.
You started back in August?
Yeah,
How's it been?
it's been pretty easy. I ain't gonna lie.
All right.
Yeah.
You want to transfer eventually or no?
I'm thinking about transferring actually probably this semester because my grade's looking good. If I could get scholarships to
Where you want to go?
Loyola.
Oh, Loyola?
Yeah.
Okay. You at home?
Yeah, I'm at home. Man, you must have knew to do this earlier because I didn't know it was going to take all this time to set up the meeting.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, Zoom be tricky sometimes because sometimes they don't even ask like for passcode and stuff. Hold on, give me a second. Let me text them. TD at home? She at work?
Oh, yeah. She at work right now.
Okay. I'm gonna give them a little while to jump on. I think both of them had late nights, but they should jump on in a few minutes. What you study? Or are you just doing your basics right now?
Yeah, I'm doing finance. That's my major.
Oh, okay.
So, yeah.
Finance, bro.
Well, because, I'm just trying to, I really want to get into business.
Mm-hmm.
But, I was like, all right, since my dad taught me political science, and then, finance was pretty much the best thing going forward.
Wait, what did your dad's mom do again? Like, wasn't she into politics?
Yeah, she was my grandma, she was into politics too. She went for political science. And, hold on.
Is Marlo?
Yeah.
What's happening, man?
It's good, bro.
Hey, he on there?
Yeah, he funny if he come back.
Oh, for sure. What's good, dog? How you doing, bro?
I'm all right. What's good with you?
Good, bro. What's your name?
Michael.
Mike?
Yeah. Oh, I got to change my name.
My name...
Abraham.
Yeah, I'm like, damn, my nigga flying? For sure.
Flying.
Nah, yeah, my name Abram.
All right.
Recording in progress.
I'm trying to wait till Trey get on start. Bro said he up. He be half asleep though. Just saying stuff.
Yeah.
My grandma, she was into politics too, cause she's like a communist. So like when my dad got my grandma back in,
back into what?
Oh, like when my dad started taking care of like his mom.
Oh, okay. All right.
So, man, going there, they just be arguing all the time because my dad is right, like conservative.
Okay,
so,
one.
Yeah.
I didn't know that. I didn't know that your dad was in the right wing.
Yeah.
Is she all the way on?
Yeah, she all the way on the left.
Okay.
Yeah. Dang, I didn't know that.
Everything, man. She not. That's just like she got some past experiences, with white people.
Yeah.
And
Okay. So my question would be like, with you kind of being like privy to like multiple different ways of thinking, what are some like popular narratives that you subscribe to? You know what I'm saying? Whether that's between like race, class, even along the gender lines? Like, what's some things that you like hold true and near and like morally resonate with?
Yeah, I mean, I'm a Christian, you know.
Okay, that's
So
what's up.
with me, you know, I believe in everything the Bible says, you know.
Okay,
And then when it comes to race, you know, people, I
yeah,
think like it's really at this point, like with my generation, it's not really my fight anymore. You know, they have people,
okay,
you know, that's gonna be racist, but at the end of the day, you feel me? I'm not forced to hang out with them. Same thing with people doing all this, you know, gay stuff and all that. You know, I
yeah,
don't particularly agree with it or co-sign it,
yeah.
but
Hey,
they
shit.
free to do it if it's the United States of America. Because I mean, at the end of the day, everybody gonna stand before God for what they do. So
Okay. You said that race isn't your fight. So, what do you define as racism?
racism, it's really hate. At the end of the day, you know,
That's what racism is to you.
that's what it is to me. You know,
So, racism
because
is an emotion to you.
yeah, because at the end of the day,
Okay.
like if you don't like somebody because of their skin color, or like
Yeah.
let's say there's a few different forms of it, right? There's somebody who's just grown up saying, you know, oh, black people, and they think, oh, black people are just lesser than. You feel me?
Okay.
That's more of ignorance, right?
Yeah.
And then you have some people who just don't like black people because they're scared of them. And then
Okay.
from that, they hate because, you know, I don't know. That's just
Yeah.
what they've been taught. Their parents hated black people, and now they hate black people. And then
Okay.
you have, you know, a more personal relationship with it where it's like you got an ethnic group that's been hurt by another one,
Okay.
and they hate them. They want to retaliate, do all this stuff. So
Okay.
at the end of the day, you
So
know,
there's like so to you there's like a spectrum of hate.
yeah, pretty much.
Okay.
Cause,
Okay.
and I think hate is the root cause because you could be raised to believe somebody is to like to think somebody is lesser than you and all this stuff. But at the end of the day, like we're humans. The second we
Okay.
start talking to somebody, that usually puts a lot of perspectives in the past. You feel me? Like we're
Okay.
taught somebody is a particular way until we meet them. You feel me?
Okay.
So yeah, that's what I think racism is. You feel me? And
Right.
I think also we like as humans, like the Bible even says, you know, we see more on the outward. You feel me?
Okay.
So us all being black, by
Yeah.
nature, we have this tendency to hang with black people or to go with black people because like we look
Yeah.
closer to each other genetically. That's just
Okay.
natural. We have to make a conscious effort to not operate on that. You feel me? On
Yeah.
that basis.
Okay. So you don't believe that like there's any overarching systemic factors that play a role into the construction of race itself, as well as like the oppression that black people talk about when they're saying like us as a people, as an ethnic group, are oppressed. Do you believe that there are systems and policies in place that purposely demean and suppress us?
Yeah, I mean, because you know, I mean, this happens across history. Um,
Okay.
as soon as you have a ethnic group that is in power in literally almost every country or empire, there's going to be the minority that gets oppressed. You know, and as far as policy goes, I mean, there's been stuff going on all the way up to the 1980s. So yeah, I do think that there was a system in place, and I think right now we have African Americans who are being raised under the consequences of what their forefathers went through. And I think now like African Americans need to realize like this is the chance that we have to really push forward and to really, you know, move forward as a people if we want to let
Just
go of
push.
the past.
What is pushing forward look like to you?
You
And sorry if
know,
I'm asking you a lot of questions. I just want to like kind of like get a basis for like how you think and stuff like that. Way I know, you know.
Okay, so
But yeah,
pushing
like, what is your
forward,
idea of pushing forward?
pushing forward, I would have to say it's a few things, but I would say it's mainly on a statistic level. I'm talking like economic performance. I'm talking you know, crime statistics and, you know, also like culture as well. I think
Yeah.
uh you know, like other ethnic groups like that have gone through genocides and all that, they have pushed forward, and like we could see that because, you know, and you know, like I'm talking about stuff that happened a long, long time ago. So let's say, uh,
No, you good.
yeah, yeah. I'm just trying to think of an example, but you know what I'm saying. Like they have people who have gone through oppression and stuff before, and now, like you know, if you see the people now, it's like they don't live under the consequences or effects of the system that they have been put through in the past. That's where I want black people to be.
I see. Yeah, I'm Trey, by the way. Can
Yeah,
you hear
what's good, Trey?
me?
My
What
name,
up?
Michael.
Michael?
Yeah.
Sure. I think you said like there's other groups who have been through genocides before and like progressed forward to like today. That's what you said, right?
Yeah.
I think most people when they say that they're talking about like Jewish people.
Yeah. Mainly, I'm talking like Jewish people. To some degree, the Russians, like they did it, they kind of oppressed themselves in a way, but you know, they were able to push forward. You have Chinese people who were treated horribly during World War II. And then, you know, even going further in the past when white people were enslaved by the Ottoman Empire, and even the Spanish, because they were conquered by the Muslims too, and they've undergone, you know, some oppression through that. So
Yeah. Um, so there was something else that you said earlier. Oh, you said that like things there were systemic things that were going on to black people here. You said something about like the 1980s, like until the 1980s.
yeah.
So like I was just curious, what are some things that you view as like systemic racism? Like what would be those things?
So I would say until like the 1960s, it was very legal in a sense. So you know, you had these things that were very overtly, you know, against black people, Jim Crow, slavery, all this stuff. Then you have the 70s where you had some 60s and 70s and even 50s where you had some very poorly implemented policy by the government. And then you have the 1980s, which is, you know, like policy. And then you have some CIA stuff going on with selling drugs in the black community. So that's pretty much the broad overview of it. And I think like the last thing that happened was probably like mass incarceration and drugs going on. So
Gotcha. So would you say that like mass incarceration is a thing of the past?
okay, so I'll say it like this, like the effects, because like mass incarceration, okay, it took fathers out of one generation, right? And you have a whole bunch of people who grew up with without a father figure, and that does have consequences, you know, in how somebody views their identity. But also, you know, I'm talking about it's a thing of the past in the sense of somebody cannot have a father in their life, like my dad. He grew up without a father, but at the end of the day, he still chose to stay in my life and to not repeat the mistakes of the past. So I think as an individual, you know, we're always going to have things happen to us. We can't control everything, you know, that's going to happen to us because, you know, at the end of the day, we're one person. Our spectrum of control is very limited. but it's how we react to these situations that are proposed to us. You know, like if you got drugs in your community, you know, I know it's hard, but at the end of the day, it's a choice to choose to get into that area of your life. Like my dad, he could have gotten the drugs, he could have gotten the streets, but he chose not to. And you can do a lot of things to influence somebody's decision, but at the end of the day, it's still your personal choice, and it's still how you choose to respond to that. And that's my philosophy. You know, I think we have to choose. I think, you know, a lot of black people now are very defined by their struggle, are very defined by the past. And the best way to push forward is to define ourselves by something new, something that we want to be able to do because we don't have the same obstacles as we did in the past. And this is our time to push forward. So
I agree. Like I don't even necessarily wholeheartedly disagree with that sentiment that like we do need to push forward and that different modalities that existed in the past aren't currently present. But I think when you follow history, and that's like the part that you when you do go back, and there's this like African idea. It's called like Sankofa, which basically means like to go back and fetch. But the whole entire premise behind it is to go back and fetch from the past, which could be useful for the present. So, right, if black people are still holding less than 1% of the wealth in the nation, are still experiencing like extreme poverty, are still experiencing majority of the homelessness in major inner cities, if they're still experiencing these things, or even economic castration. I mean, I don't know. I see you have a University of New Orleans shirt on, but it's hard to get a job right now. I mean, Imari could tell you, you know what I'm saying? Like, it don't matter how skilled you are, it don't matter how many degrees you got. Even for white people, it's hard to get a job. So imagine how much even harder it is for a black person who doesn't have an uncle, who doesn't have some sort of family member who works in these businesses that could give them a referral and get them in. You know what I'm saying? It's just that much harder. So with all these different kind of variables that tie into not even being able to access all the privileges of being an American, I think we also have to have a clear idea, like, despite the different changes in time, like we're not in shackles and picking cotton in the field no more. I think there's still existing things that are still present in our life that we have to confront. And like how you were saying, like, oh, my generation, I feel like almost like they're existing in this, like we have to capture the time now. And that's completely correct. Like, I think it was like Frederick Douglass had a quote talking about how every generation you have to fight. Like, just because your past generation was able to gain some successful legislation or some successful rights or autonomy, whatever like that, that doesn't mean it can't be stripped. You see what's going on with affirmative action and DI and all these different things. Not saying those were like super liberatory, but at the time, those things did help transition black people into more stable living conditions and better opportunities, which a lot of, even at the university level, right, a lot of these presidents, VPs and stuff, they were the people who benefited from these things. Clarence Thomas even, right, even though he's like a right-wing conservative Supreme Court person, he benefited from the affirmative action and he was able to get in based off of that pretext. But it's not as simple as like choices, you know what I'm saying? Because like I've been privileged. Like I didn't have to grow up, even though I grew up in like lower income housing, I didn't have to grow up in around like a bunch of gunfire and things like that. That psychologically damages your head. You seeing your family members affect you chemically, like, and you can't really account for the psychological damage that's been done to you. You know what I'm saying? It's easy for somebody to sit back and posture themselves from a place of like comfort and understanding like, oh yeah, I could try and work my way into this and that. But like, as somebody who their family members are strung out, what you supposed to do then? You know what I'm saying? What choices are left then? And I think those are some things that like have to be confronted at some point. We can't just keep looking over majority of black people's experiences here and kind of be like, oh, well, that person chose, and kind of using this like good and evil dichotomy to explain life. Like, it's not as simple as some people make it seem. You know what I mean?
Yeah, well, Yeah, there's a few things, right? So one, I do think we definitely need to learn from our past, and even all of us, like we made mistakes. But there's a big difference between somebody who takes these mistakes and uses it to judge his own worth. That's that's what I feel like a lot of black people really judge themselves by what happened in the past. You feel me? And I think that's really like one of the biggest problems. You feel me? Because really, we need people to learn from what happened and not use it to judge themselves. And you know, when people use it to judge, when people use it to judge themselves, right? You feel me? It makes you hate people, and you see all this, you know, all this emotion. You're not working out of logical point of view. And I do agree. Like, it's easy for us to say here, oh, you know, you should have made this choice, you should have made that choice, especially in hindsight. But like looking back at history, like really the best example I could give now is like the Chinese, right? They were brutally oppressed. You feel me? And we can even make the argument until economically they were brutally oppressed until like the 1990s. But at the end of the day,
Question. My bad. Are you talking about Chinese American, like people who came to America? Or are you talking about China in China itself?
I'm talking about China, like the country, right? So
Yeah, but like you're talking about the people who were like, you're not talking about the people who came here and on the railroad shit and all that. You're not talking about none of that, right?
that's a whole different, yeah.
Okay, but you talking about what happened in China though, right?
Yeah. So
Oh, that's perfect.
so like in China, let's say beginning of the 18th century, they called it the century of humiliation. So they pretty much they were economically colonized by the British. They were forced to export things. Then they were selling drugs in their country, and a whole bunch of people got addicted. And then you had the Taiping Rebellion, one of the deadliest conflicts of that century. And then a few years later, the Japanese decide to invade them and commit worse human rights violations, pretty much on par with Nazi Germany. Experimenting on people, testing chemical diseases on them. I mean, just some real like messed up stuff. And then, you know, they have their independence, but they still have to fight a civil war. Then after the civil war, they're put under a dictator who causes a great famine. 30 million people die. And then, you know, you still have authoritarianism until, say, the 80s or 90s, where they decide to economically open themselves up. And they're still being oppressed today. But what I'm saying is they still, at the end of the day, it's a culture thing on top of that as well. So instead of, you know, choosing to judge themselves by the past, saying, oh, the Japanese invaded us, oh, they conquered us, I guess we gonna suck. They essentially said, they took the past and they said, okay, well maybe this after the Japanese, they said, okay, maybe we got defeated because we didn't industrialize enough. So they industrialized, and even that failed. Many people died, and after those people died, they said, all right, well maybe it's the way our economy works. Maybe the government doesn't need to be so involved in our economy. So then they changed it and they opened up their economy to the world. And you know, there's other countries that have examples like this. I have to think, man. I really have to think. But even like all across like the decolonized world, you have these huge disasters, and they still aren't where they are now, to where it's a whole bunch of processes. It's a whole bunch of failures that happen to get to that point. And even like with our personal decisions, I think, because I'm a Christian, right? So, you know, in the word it says the law is written on our hearts and minds. So people know what's right and wrong, no matter the desperate situation. And people know, like, if somebody wanted to kill somebody else for some money or because they were struggling, they know at the end of the day, killing somebody is wrong. You feel me? So I don't know. Like, I know it's easy for me to say it in my situation because I have never been tested. My moral capabilities have never been tested. But I really think that it's really somebody's choice. Economically, I'm not sure, but I do think it's somebody's choice. Like my even going through my family, like my dad grew up without a father in his life, but if you go further back in the time, my great grandfather, he owned his own home. He had a family, he had a business, and he had stuff like that. And then even on a Imari side, on our family side, you go further back, we had a great grandfather who lived and he died with like multiple acres under his ownership, under his possession, millions of dollars. So, I do think to a degree, it is our choice. And I think historically, if you put ourselves in a historical context, it's much easier compared to much of history to gain wealth. Even, I'm just saying, that's kind of where I'm coming from. And I'm not even pointing the finger at nobody. I'm not even pointing the finger at anybody who even chose to go down that road because, they made mistakes. You feel me? And they were forced into some pretty tough situations. But I do think, we have to choose the right thing.
No, definitely. I do think it's a lot easier now to engage economically than it was when we were in shackles in the field. But the economy itself is different, right? During that time, even just in general, like this was like pre-industrialization. So it wasn't just like cash flow like how it is running now. But okay, I'm gonna let Trey talk at this. But you said something like killing people's wrong. Like I have a gun right here. If I were to smack you with this gun, right, and you had a gun,
I'm on stream.
Would you bust
I don't know
back?
if that's a lie.
I'm just saying, like, if I were to smack you with the barrel of this gun, your lip bleeding, and I'm like, do something, pussy. Mm-hmm. You got the right to defend yourself?
Well, yeah, but in the Bible it says,
what you saying but for? It's a yes or a no.
Am I doing something? No.
Yeah, yeah.
Nah.
So you're not. So I can kill you, and you just gonna be like, well, the Bible told me to die.
Well, you have a gun. What
Yeah.
I'm not.
I'm saying
I'm
saying you got.
I'm not gonna do some martial arts and take the gun away from you.
No. I'm saying you have a gun too, but right. I caught you lacking. Right. You walk into your crib. I smack you in the back of your head with my pistol.
Well, remember, even in the Bible, God commanded people to kill in self-defense. So I do still have. There's a difference between thou shalt not like murder, which is killing out of cold blood, killing out of personal gain, and killing out of self-defense, out of protection for your life and your family. And even if I did die, I'm not gonna crash out because I believe in Jesus.
Yeah.
So
no.
like,
I was just making sure. We're on the same page here with self-defending yourself. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Because there's some people out here who really be like, nah, like I'll just suck on the barrel of the gun and like die. So I was making sure we clear. Yeah, I was making sure we clear. All right, bet. Trey, did you want to say something?
Yeah, there was a couple things. China, I love that you use China as an example too, by the way. But there's like a couple, I guess, questions that I would have for you. So, China, do you think that, you say like it's about choices. I guess my question is, do you think it's about individual choices or like communal choices and struggles, like an organized struggle? Like, did China's revolution happen because of a few individual choices, or was it because of an organization? That also, like, speaking on this topic of killing people or fighting or self-defense, China didn't just acknowledge like that we were oppressed and just try to move forward. They fought their oppressors. Like, they actually fought and killed their oppressors in the form of the Japanese, in the form of the Chinese, in the form of the opposition party. So I think like if we're comparing the situations of black people here in America to the country of China, like we have to take that into consideration, that there was like a struggle, a fight, and an entire reorganization of their society and their system that black people haven't we haven't had that struggle, that revolution, that entire reorganization of society. So it's kind of hard to compare our current conditions on that basis, unless like is the goal for us to have that reorganization of society, like for us to make that choice and that struggle to like overturn the oppressive system that has been like over us, or do you think that oppressive system has just disappeared like without a fight and without a revolution, and now we're like free to operate how we can? And I don't know if that question made sense or if like what I'm saying made sense. Let me know. But I have a second thought about some things he said. I completely agree as well. Like it's a lot easier for us to access the economy. Like we have new Black billionaires every year. We have, I think, there were like, I mean, we had a record number of Black millionaires. I think in 2019. I don't remember the exact year. Abram might know, but yeah, we had like a record number of new Black millionaires, like over 1,000 new Black millionaires in 1 year. But in that same year, the overall Black capture of national wealth remained the same or reduced or went down. So while a few individuals made the right economic choices, made the right economic moves, and a lot of individuals, thousands of individuals, moved themselves into a different class, the overall capture of the wealth went down. So I'm just wondering, do you think that it's possible for every individual to make those choices based on that stat when there's thousands more people ascending into new classes while the masses, like the 99%, is remaining in the same position or going down at the same time? Do you think that it's possible for that 99% to make the right choices and ascend classes? Well, is it possible for there to be no lower class? Is it possible for every Black person to ascend to middle class, to live a financially stable life in this economy?
Okay.
So, yeah.
I want to add a little bit to that too, also, but just like kind of like what you said, but I think this highlights how making the right choice and choosing college and work doesn't always equate to like moving up in class. Like there are a bunch of people that's making the decision of like, okay, like I'm coming from a place where all I see is drugs, prostitution, like etc. But I'm gonna choose this regular job. But that doesn't equate to like them doing good now because they made the good choice.
Yeah, I agree with that because you could still go to college and you feel me, go into the wrong major, or you feel me, be put in a competitive market. So I do agree with that, and I agree that college doesn't just magically fix the way you've been raised. And also the first part of your question, Trey. So you were saying, are you trying to say that basically the biggest difference between us and the Chinese was that they had their own nation state and that they were able to pretty much just organize themselves, had the political power to do so? Okay.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. And like, I want clarity from you. Like, do you view the circumstances of Black people here as similar to the colonized Chinese? Because I do personally. I think that's why I like that comparison, because yeah, China is an example of a people fighting for self-determination and establishing their own nation state, organized around their principles. And also, there's one more thing like about China, like moving on from the past, like their century of humiliation, they honor that every single year. They that's not something that they forget about. So like our oppression is never should be something that we should forget about, but it's something, if we're looking to China as a model, it is something that we should remember and not like see our value in, but see like the value in our struggle kind of thing. Like this is where we were, and this is where we fought this is what we fought against and to get to where we are now. And like this is something that we always have to honor and remember. Like that's how the Chinese view their century of humiliation. Like it's not like it's kind of like a never again kind of thing. Like after they fought and established their own nation state, it's a never again. Like we'll never allow our president to do this to us again. That's like their mentality about it. And they honor it every year, like in an annual celebration. But yeah, the establishment of a nation state, like a revolution to overthrow the oppressor, I think that's the key difference between our two groups of people, for sure. Like they have land based, you know.
And I think that's, why, like, at least I'll speak for myself, like I subscribe to the idea of Pan-Africanism, because I think there's also like a particularity in the fact that us as Black people, us as African people here, we didn't settle here. We didn't come here by choice. We didn't wake up one day, you know what? You know how people be like, oh yeah, let's go to Turks and Caicos. I was like, no, let me go to the Americas, man. Like them indigenous Native American folks, shit, they got some bad hoes. Like, let me go over there. Like, oh yeah, they lit over there. Like they got the moonshine and shit. Like, let's slide. Like, let's start a whole settlement in that bitch. Like, no. It was a whole Middle Passage, Maafa, a whole entire transatlantic slave trade. It's really a European slave trade, let's be real. They financed the whole bitch. But either way, there's that fact that, like, this, for one, necessarily isn't our land. But even so, it being our land at this point, just because of how many generations we've been here, we were never the majority. Like Chinese people, it was, obviously there's different ethnic groups within China, you know what I mean? But that's their land. They don't have to, like, if a European person came over there, it's easier to kick them out. We can't kick Europeans off this land. You know what I'm saying? Like, that's just not even a reality. So I think that's something too that is I feel like sometimes harder to wrap our heads around, and being like, okay, like, what do we do here? Because we could look at, what happened in China. We could look at, even the Bolsheviks, or what happened in Russia and stuff like that, and be like, oh yeah, we should kind of fashion ourselves after them. There's things to be learned from them, but we also have to understand, like, scientifically, our situation is just completely different in a lot of ways, in that there's different things that we have to struggle through and figure out for ourselves that haven't been figured out before,
Yeah, well, there is another example. Now, it's not exactly the same in terms of history, but it is similar. The Jewish people, I do think to a certain extent they can be comparable, because they have historically been a minority, but they've been a middle minority where they've outperformed. Oh, okay. I'll let you. This is.
Nah, I'm just playing with you. Yeah, go ahead, keep talking.
Well, yeah, they've historically been a mineral minority where they've pretty much outperformed the people that they've settled amongst. But there's a lot of stuff. I really should have taken some notes. But yeah, in response to the China thing, right? So yeah, I do think we do have to figure out how, as like African Americans as a minority in our society, how to make the same kind of change and movement that other people have done in other parts of the world. But I also do think, to some degree, like, we do have the tools, especially like with social media, we have the ability to influence our own culture. And we do have the ability to make an effect as individuals. Like, that was the main thing. Trey B, you were saying, is it individual choice, or is it whatchamacallit? Is it a statewide
like an organized
policy?
Yeah, communal. Yeah.
So there, even in America, I mean, we've seen it through social media. There have been cultural changes, but it hasn't been policy level. It's been done through individuals through the internet. You feel me? So even, let's just say that, like, the media moving more left. You feel me? Just in general. I'm just saying, as a general thing, since the 1950s, culture has shifted more towards the left in terms of social policy and how we see different races and different genders and all this stuff. That can be done, and it wasn't done by the majority. It was done by the minority. So I do think as individuals we have to choose to be better for ourselves, for our family, because if we walk it ourselves, it's gonna have a change on the people around us. But I also think that we can also make the choice to collaborate with other people to make a difference in how us as a culture act. Because I do think there are a bunch of people in our culture who have shifted our culture away, and it's been done before. And with in the 1980s with gang rap and all this stuff, there have been people in our culture who have gained power, and they've managed to shift it away from the culture that we had in the 1950s and 60s to a whole different thing going forward into what we see now, and that's just how I see it, and also I do think this. I think it takes time as well, because I don't think it's going to happen like this. You feel me? Historically, things do move faster now than they have in the past. But, I mean, if you just look at the numbers and if you look at, okay, we've gone through a whole bunch of stuff, but even recently, like even us being emancipated from slavery and then us moving forward, still going through oppression, I do think that it's not going to magically happen to where we just catch up or surpass white people in terms of wealth. Because that just hasn't happened in America. The only way that's happened is somehow through immigrants who just come here and make a lot more money through education, though. So, yeah.
Yeah. There's one thing I definitely agree with you. Like something you said about culture, like the ways that we as individuals can help influence culture. Like I don't disagree that like that there are like very non-liberatory elements of like what's considered like popular Black culture, I guess you could say. And this is something also, like whenever you said that, it just made me think about China as well, because they had a cultural revolution. I mean, people say Mao was like authoritarian and whatnot, but the cultural revolution is an important part of like how this culture in China shifted away from the century of humiliation. And this again like has to do with like a capture of political power. Like it's not individuals deciding, like we're just gonna change. Like we're gonna be better. This is like a political process as a part of like a revolution, as a part of like a struggle by an entire people kind of thing. So like I think like that's something that's required for people who've been oppressed and like are trying to liberate themselves. I do think some sort of like cultural revolution is necessary, because with any economic and political oppression, like there's a disorientation of culture naturally. So like a cultural revolution is necessary. But again, I would just say like that has to do with like our ability to access political power in order to like make systemic changes that like impact culture. But what was the second point that you just made?
Well, let me see about the Cultural Revolution. It was an effort mainly like by Mao, because they were communists, and communists don't believe in like religious stuff. And China was very spiritual, right? And that was an effort to shift the Chinese away from whatever religion they were practicing to go towards atheism, and that failed. And they had the political power to do it. You feel me? But if you look at China now, they still practice all that spiritual stuff. They still even go to the way of their ancestors, right? So I don't particularly believe that you need political power to shift the way a culture behaves, because I think our government, right? We have a government that has tried to enforce political beliefs on us, right? So even in the 60s, we had, or 50s, we still had a right-wing-ish government, but it wasn't the government that particularly led the change to change how we view each other politically. It was people, and it was media perception, It was education. Even they were using education to do it as well. And even now, with Trump winning, I think that, one of the main reasons like Kamala Harris lost was because they didn't understand. Like, okay, I know I'm going to get into some political opinions, right? But, with the transgenderism stuff, with the very recent political, social stuff, right? You know where I'm going with this, right? With, am I being clear?
What with?
I'll just say, like, with gender, Marxism, like that. That is something just historical on the spectrum. It's a very left thing, right? And it's something that Democrats have co-signed, but they didn't understand that most people are ambivalent or they are against that type of theory and thinking. Like if you ask most Americans, they really didn't really care about the trans issue or things like that because they had no stake in it. And I think it's crazy because, like, Democrats, I would say, like, since Obama, they had a lot of the political power for people. Like, you would think, okay, well, I guess everybody would agree with this sort of thinking, but they didn't. So I'm just trying to say, like, there have been instances where you had a country that had political power, but they weren't able to successfully impose that type of cultural shift. And even the ones that did, like with Nazi Germany, it was quickly established and then it faded away. Same thing with Russia. Their atheism view, it was quickly established and then it went away again because now most Russians are Orthodox Christianity. Or even with China, they're still spiritual now, even though we had a cultural revolution that were pretty much enforced by some very harsh political forces, right? These are authoritarian countries we're talking about, and none of the changes that they've made stay in effect today. And even when they tried it, they still had opposition. They weren't able to make people change. So I was saying, with my second point, that I do think that, you need a small degree of political power, maybe, to make political change. But I also would say that, if you ask somebody who was in the 1950s, right? Like that generation of African American, if you remember anybody from that time, you will understand that they come from a different type of culture than we do have now. And I would say that cultural shift towards hip hop, towards gang rap, stuff like that, that pretty much happened around the 80s or 90s. You feel me? But our past generations, they don't seem like they've had that type of influence on them. And the people who spearheaded that change towards what we see now with the Sexy Red and stuff, and with other gang rappers of the 90s and stuff like that, that wasn't spearheaded by political power. It was spearheaded by people who just made music and who had money to push that music out.
Who had the money to push that music out? There's two things that you said, media perceptions and education is ways that people have shifted culture. I would argue that neither one of those things are individual level things at all. The government 100% is involved in 90% of media institutions, and they're 100% involved in curriculum. They develop the education in public schools. So these are two things that are greatly impacted and controlled by people who, I guess we could say, are at least our former oppressors. And there was something else you said. You said.
I should let me condense it right quick. What I'm saying is, there are examples of people who had political power but weren't able to properly enforce the change.
Yeah. That was okay. So I would say that I don't think the Cultural Revolution was just about banning Christianity. It was about purging capitalist elements. It was about a re-education. Every revolution even in Africa, well, not everyone, but a lot of them in Ghana, in Guinea, Bissau, a lot of the first revolutions, independence movements in Africa. One of the first things that they do is reorganize education completely, and purge elements of colonial education. What was the values of colonialism, which is capitalism, individualism. These are things that are purged in a lot of these revolutions that we're talking about. And they do this systemically, to change the minds of the masses of people. It has to be introduced systemically. And we talked about America, how they failed to implement certain things. Yeah, that's what it was. So I would just say I don't think the Democrats are a Marxist-aligned party at all. And I think America is a great example of how they influence culture. And it might not seem like Nazi Germany, where it's these are the set of ideals that everyone has to believe in. But it's instilled in a lot of Americans through the two things that you said, mass media and education, inherently. And it doesn't have to feel like we're being authoritarian, this is being forced on us. Anti-communism is a prime example. Both parties, the Democrats and the Republicans, have historically been anti-communist. No, there's never been a communist, a self-declared Marxist, Democrat, or Republican that's ever won or ran for office. Each party has called the other Marxists in debates to try to ding points because they know that this is a term that most Americans don't like, and they know why that most Americans don't like it because of Have you ever heard of McCarthyism?
Yeah.
Yeah, because of McCarthyism. That's political power. The United States literally criminalized communism. You couldn't say this. You couldn't say that you're a Marxist or a communist. You would go to jail. You would lose your job. You would get exposed. Thousands of people did. People died. They killed people. They killed even white families for being self-declared communists or being involved with communist organizations. And that has remained in American culture. That's an integral part of American culture. Whether you're white or black, this is something that most people subscribe to. And they don't even have to know what communism is. And they know that communism is bad because of what they hear on the news and what they've heard in school. And that was my experience until I actually learned what communism was. I inherently didn't like communism. So I think that's a perfect example of how capture of political power shapes the culture. All Americans, you can ask, and pretty much any American that you if you walk outside and ask what they feel about communism, they would give you a negative response.
Yeah. Well, and a matter of fact, I do want to take that point because now that I think about it, I do see the government does have a lot of influence on our media and our education. But even with McCarthyism, that even failed around 10 years later with the civil rights movement. So I do think there is a limit to some degree, and the Cultural Revolution, mainly because communism was an idea that pretty much the very central part of it is because the economy is centered around the government. What they wanted people to think is that your duty was to the government and not to any other traditional values that you held. That's pretty much the core root of it, right? And they even denounced, I'm looking it up now, they tried to alter cultural and social values. So Confucianism, historical artifacts, temples, artworks, all these things that have been around for a long time, they were trying to basically erase it from Chinese culture. But that didn't work. And even at that time where the pressure was hot, you would probably be executed or killed for believing in this stuff, people still did not care because that's what their culture believed in. And I do think now, especially, there is big media, which is CNN, Fox News, and all that stuff. And then there's a more grassroots media where you have, TikTok, YouTube, and all this stuff. With this Israel-Palestine thing, I mean, most people really did not care until these past 2 years. Most people would not know what you're talking about if you brought this up, and they definitely wouldn't be picking sides. And even with African Americans, I think, especially with MLK, he played on the part that if we didn't fight back and people were like recording this, televising this, this would show to the wider America, to the whole nation, that like this is just wrong. You feel me? Because people see people getting beat up and they're like, oh, this is wrong. We have to change something about this. And that put pressure on our governments. So I do think it is a two-way thing, especially in America, where our political rights can directly change how the government operates, but the way the government operates can definitely have an effect on what we do. And with education, that can be done on a grassroots level. At the end of the day, you could have a school teaching one thing, but if you have somebody who teaches you something else and you end up believing it, and you're like, well, man, I guess my school is wrong, and then you spread it. At the end of the day, it's going to override what the government is funding. And even this with Rome, with Christianity, people were literally like trying to purge like Romans were trying to purge Christianity for years, like killing them, putting them in coliseums, doing the most gruesome things to them. But it ended up becoming the leading religion of Rome after all that effort. So I do think, the government really doesn't have as much power in political power as we give it credit. And I do think political power, especially in America, can be held by the people and government at the same time.
Word. I pretty much agree with you on the two. Let me make sure I got the 2 points correctly. That the government does have an impact on like what we know, believe, and like practice. But what we do can also put pressure on the government to like shift. Hey, you brought up Martin Luther King. I think that's a really good example. So, yeah. So, like, there's this. Do you know about critical race theory?
Yeah.
Yeah. So, like, there's like camps in that like school of thought. I guess in that theory, there's like different schools of thought within that, and one of them is the idealist. And the idealist believes that like if people see how bad like this shit is. This racism, like this violence that we're experiencing, people will change their minds and like things will change and this will stop eventually. And the idea is like, look at how far we've come. People saw that slavery was bad and people saw that Jim Crow was bad. People saw that this was bad and now we're here. Like that's the idea, the idealist. But where I struggle with the idealist framework of thinking is that right now we have more visibility of like Black death than we've ever had, even more so than when Martin Luther King was marching. Like we see police kill more Black people every year now than they ever have. They kill over 1,000 Black people, and whether we say this different individuals should have behaved differently or not, every year hundreds of unarmed Black people are killed by the police, and it's on video. And these things go viral on social media, and they reach a much wider audience. But this nothing has materially changed from this mass viewing of Black death. Nothing has materially changed. Like the numbers have increased for like the past 4 or 5 years for police killings. Even post 2020, the police killings went up. So I wonder like I don't have faith in the idea that like racism can be eliminated or racist violence can be eliminated by people's minds changing. I think that there has to be structural reorganization. And I also think that that was also Martin Luther King's position towards the end of his life. Those were like the major political shifts that were happening. He was more concerned with like workers and essentially like making the government like pay their fair share to black people. Like that, those were his demands towards the end of his life. He had kind of shifted away from a civil rights, like, well, not a civil rights, but like he had shifted away from this appeal to white people, like to see our suffering kind of thing. He was shifting more to like organized efforts to seize economic and political power, like from the government, and demand it from the government, to put pressure on the government, like you were saying. I think that like that's why I completely agree. I think that's like, for me, that's the most important thing for us to realize, is that like there is power that people have when they're organized to put pressure onto different governments, and whatever that pressure may look like. And that's when we're talking about these other examples in different countries. That's what they did. They organized and put, the utmost pressure on their oppressors. They fought them, and we haven't. We have fought though. Like we're talking about people like Martin Luther King. We have fought, but we have not obtained any like a substantial victory in that way. If I'm making sense, but yeah.
Well, okay. There's a few things, right? So I want to make sure I have your point. So you were saying, what you're basically saying is that even though we have the power to put pressure on government, it's still not substantial, because we're even seeing now more media of African Americans that supports our side, but we're not seeing any material change, right?
We have the power. I would say that like there is power that exists in like organized masses, but I don't think that at the level that we're at, especially since the 60s, like we're in a position to exercise that power at all, because we're not organized. But one of my like reasonings for that is because we're a lot more individual. Like individualism has taken a much deeper root in our community. I don't think people think in like for the black masses. I think people think for themselves, and like most people aren't concerned with like shifting things for like the black masses. Like we're living more in like a neoliberal society where individualism and like personal private property and success is like kind of more important, and that's like a cultural aspect of America as well. That has been enforced by like government structures, education, and media. But yeah, I just don't think that. Yeah, did that make more sense?
Yeah. So with the black killings and stuff like that, all I can really say about that, really, I would say the main thing. So I do think the police relationship with African Americans has even changed the way that policing works. Like body cams, they weren't really a thing until African Americans put pressure on the police for that. And also with this recent 2020 thing, really the only thing I can really say about that is there wasn't really a coherent or clear strategy on how to change the police. Like, I remember the defund the police thing, or training them to be more like therapists. But, from my view, I was just kind of like, this is somewhat impractical, right? To just defund the police. And at the end of the day, especially, this is like throughout society, the government can enforce a certain policy, but at the end of the day, the individual chooses how he chooses, to enforce that policy on his level. You feel me? Because, some governments could be like, hey, don't attack this person or that person, but they can still choose, because in the moment they do have that power. So I do think at the end of the day, especially as a Christian, I think there are people that choose to do good and people who choose to do evil. There's always going to be people who choose to do evil despite a political system. I don't think a political system is going to save black people, and it doesn't even save white people because they still, even white people go to political killings and, killings by the police while unarmed as well. So, I don't think government is the solution to our problems, because I think at the end of the day, we're still going to have problems because we're human. And I think God is the solution as far as like, to all of our problems. But,
Word. Yeah. So I think with the police killings, what did you say?
I said,
Body cams. Like, were you clarify what you're saying?
I'm about to go take my dog out, but I'll say it right quick. So what I was saying is body cams were an example, of police killings influencing how they even operated. They made them have body cams. And also with what I was saying with the 2020 thing is when all these police killings were happening, there wasn't really a coherent policy movement from African Americans. And the ones that did come out, like the defund the police stuff, I was just very against that. So I think that's why it didn't materialize, because I think it was just too radical. But I'll be right back. I have to take out my dog. So
For sure. Bet.
Boy, I just took a big ass shot. Oh, man.
Okay. That's not the biggest what he does. Okay.
On this whole ride. But yeah, nigga, fuck the police.
Oh man. Ooh, shit. How y'all niggas doing there? Y'all good? How y'all?
Yeah, shit. What y'all been on, man?
Good dog.
Good.
Mar, you inside, right?
Yeah.
I didn't put up.
Wait,
Nah.
you're in Houston right now, right?
Yeah, I'm at PV.
So you're gonna be here up until the 29th, or you gonna come back?
Now I'm gonna come back 29th.
You're
gonna be in there the 29th? I'm gonna be there on the 28th.
For real?
Yeah.
Oh, wait, you sliding on 29th?
Now we're gonna. What's the 29th?
AJ.
AJ shit.
Oh, no. I'm going back because I don't got class on. Oh, y'all are going?
Yeah, I'm gonna go.
No, I'm going back because I don't have class on Tuesday. I'm going to the Young Boy show. I'm doing I got a $75 flight. I come back on the 29th, so I have class on the 29th.
How does his court hearing go? Like,
I haven't been to appeal. I don't know what the appellate process is like, but
is he going prison?
I think so. I mean, at trial.
Yeah.
I mean, this is different. I'm sure he will though. If it's oral arguments.
Jail this whole time?
Huh?
They've had him in jail this whole time?
Yeah, he got sentenced. He got sentenced to life, 25 to life. This is an appeal. Like this is like,
That's right.
like Hail Mary type shit. But he has the kind of case that's like that has a much better chance at appeal.
Has he been studying law while he was there?
Nah, I mean, he mainly been on like his. I'm sure maybe, but like not. That's not like what he spends most of his time doing. Like he be going to church. He works. He play basketball.
Okay.
He has good lawyers. Though. He has good lawyers. Though.
All right.
He playing.
But yeah, I'm sure he knows. Like he knew the ins and outs of his case. Like during trial, like he knew everything.
Yeah.
But this is a different lawyer, the appeal lawyer. But I don't know how it's going.
Yeah, that's what I was about to say. I'm interested to see what the end is gonna take.
Y'all heard on the phone who said that?
Sure, it's gonna have a lot to do with like the discrepancies in the trial, like mishandling the evidence, a lot of things. Like, yeah. Officers when he's lying on stands. Also, yeah, like the no physical evidence. I'm sure. I don't know how appeals goes. Like, I don't know if the oral arguments have to do with like the conviction, or if it's like you're starting from scratch, like you're just like at the beginning, like or like if you're starting from the basis that like this person's convicted and you have to like disprove his conviction. But yeah, it be in court. You could just like go in and chill, like and watch. It'd be long though, especially.
Yeah, that's what they did. The lady that killed my uncle, that's what we did. They sat up in that bitch.
Yeah.
They wanted to smack down.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, bro. What?
Oh, my bad.
So then,
Weird timing.
All right. But doing Amari, bro.
I promise I don't hit women, bro. It's just.
Wait, there was one thing I wanted to say to you about. You live in New Orleans, right?
Yeah.
And I'm not.
He lives like a couple blocks down from your people. This
Yeah, I'm in.
from that,
Yeah, I'm in
your
Kenner.
parents' crib in New Orleans.
Oh, really? Oh, you in Kenner?
Yeah.
So the I don't know if you saw recently, like the local budget for New Orleans that just came out.
Yeah, Cantrell. Yeah.
So like I mean, I'm not gonna like disagree, but like you said that you don't think it's like practical to like defund the police, but I would say like I don't think it's practical. Like these police, there hasn't been like certain cities tried out like a small percentage of defunding certain like programs in their departments, but every single department since 2020, their police budgets have increased. Every major city's department, and the New Orleans budget just came out. Everything else got slashed besides the police budget. And if you're trying to address crime, cutting services such as healthcare, education, whatever community programs, that doesn't and giving more money to enforcing crime, to criminalizing crime, that doesn't solve crime. It just gives you better resources to arrest people. And I don't think that's practical in slashing like human resources in order to give the police budgets increases. I don't think that that's practical in addressing crime either. But I completely agree that like 2020, there was no coherent plan that was offered. Because even the defund the police, it's like these are like social media movements, and like certain people are calling for it. The protests, no one had there's no clear ideology. There's not one ideology. The main organizations leading it capitalized off of it, became millionaires off of it. So I completely agree with like how that moment was like we were failed or we failed ourselves in that moment. But I don't necessarily think that I don't know if like if that doesn't hold. I think it's part of it. I don't know if that doesn't the defund the police necessarily. I don't know if that doesn't hold because it's too radical, or if like I don't know. I just struggle with like if it's too radical for Black people, because Black people have taken much more radical stances before. In these times that we're talking about, like in the '60s, when there was like a much clearer idea. Huh?
I just don't think it's organized enough.
Yeah, like we don't.
Like we don't.
Yeah, like we're not. Like that's what I was saying about the individualism thing. I think most people in America, not just Black people, are concerned with their own personal well-being, and like that has so much to do with like what we're willing to commit, what our views are on like what liberation looks like for a group of people. If we're only focused on our own personal well-being, whereas in the '60s there was a lot more of a collective mindset, and that's not just because of like who they were. I think it has a lot to do with the conditions. Like you said, we have a lot more access now to the economy. Like there's a lot more individual access to success. Like that's much more visible and attainable to us now than it was in the '60s. I think that has a lot to do with it. Neoliberalism as an ideology. And I'll tell you, I'm saying neoliberalism. I don't know if you like know what that is, like the tenets of it, I guess. But like that's like the guiding ideology of America, globally and like domestically, like privatization, individualism. That's the guiding policy ideology, and that's like ingrained in society in some way. Like even if it's not this authoritarian way that we like normally think of it, most people subscribe to like those tenets, and that has a lot to do with like whatever efforts Black people are making to, fix the situation.
Yeah, I'm curious on what you think about that, though, Michael. Like, yeah, you living there, obviously, and knowing that New Orleans is probably like last in infrastructure, last in education, last in all these things, and seeing them cut that budget even further and putting that into the police funding. Like, what's your thoughts on that?
Well, there's a few things, right? So I think because America is a democracy, we have to please multiple different ethnic groups. with our policy. So I think, in the 60s when we saw black people get basically beaten, tortured on camera, and everybody saw that, they knew there had to be a change because it didn't even align with our core ideology. Then with body cam policing, I mean, who's really going to be against that? Even right-wing people are going to support that because at the end of the day, we do need to hold corrupt officials, people who are in power, accountable. Everybody's for that. But when we get to defunding the police, you have to be more specific about in what way, and you really need to convince me on that, because when you tell me that you want to defund the police, that's so vague. And I think we saw a lot of right-wing people go, oh, defund the police. Oh, they just want the therapists to be the law enforcement. Oh, look at liberals soft on crime, letting everybody out. You feel me? That it was just very easy to just be taekwondoed, flipped on your back. And with New Orleans, man, we're in debt. And Cantrell, man, she is a bad mayor. I think she spent, and because she was paying her boyfriend that she was having an affair with on the clock overtime, like 24 hours. She spent around $50 million paying overtime for these police officers, and we're in debt right now. So I mean, she went against the budget. I think she like did some stuff on purpose to fulfill her own personal needs. You feel me? So as far as that goes with New Orleans, I understand the play that Cantrell has in that. I'm not even mad that they're slashing on this stuff, because we need to pay off our debt. And Cantrell built up that debt, not through police, but through overtime that we didn't need. And another thing, with Imari, right, talking about, our declining infrastructure. I do know this as well. New Orleans now is half the population that we were in our peak. So I understand it's harder to maintain infrastructure when you had infrastructure that was built for twice your population. So Houston, right? Houston is a bustling city. It's growing up. It's growing. But that's not the case with New Orleans, because we used to have in our metro or in our city center, we used to have 600,000 people, and now we have 380 something thousand. So mainly what I'm trying to say is, especially with people moving to suburban areas, all these people leaving our city and going to these like suburban areas, and even leaving our city to get away from natural disasters, that did a whole bunch of damage to our tax base. And now we have all these buildings that were built for all the people that used to be here that we kind of have to leave in decay because we don't have the money to support that. You feel me? It's one thing to say, I want to give resources to these people over there. But if they can't even maintain that, if they're not even making a return on investment, we're a capitalist country. So if we're putting an investment into infrastructure, we have to make sure that's for a purpose. You feel me? So
you're saying, I'm gonna say one more thing. So you think prior to Mayor Control like putting us in this quote unquote debt, or I guess sustaining the debt, you feel like that they were open with government funding to like help, but now since we're prioritizing paying off our debt, like that's why getting a return on their investment.
Yeah, that, and it's already a bad situation. Like as a city, the fact, like, how do I even say it? Like, let's say you had a family. Let's say we operated differently. Like our family, we all gathered together. Let's say like 10 family members. We live in the same house, and we even bought a few houses so that we could live on the same block, and we're all working, right? Okay, let's say half of these people left, and they go somewhere else. Are you going to keep the same amount of buildings, paying taxes on them, repairing them, doing all this stuff, but you have half the money, half the tax base that you had before then? It's not sustainable. And I think that's the situation we're in now. We have people, look, we have 300,000 people trying to maintain a city that was built for 700,000 people. But it's not supposed to be that way. That's why our infrastructure is declining, because we can't even maintain this stuff.
I have one question about that. Like that's definitely an important point about half of the population leaving Katrina. I mean, but I feel like that has a lot to do with the economy never recovering. Like, and how does funding police more help this issue? And like, why do you think that the city does that? Like you say, you understand why they're slashing all this stuff to pay for debt, but why is the police budget the only budget that gets an increase? And this isn't just a New Orleans thing. This is a thing that happens nationally. It happened in Atlanta. It happened in Houston. So these are the three cities that I've lived in. It's happened in all three of those cities. I'm not sure about Jackson. I'm sure Jackson has a similar situation. I lived in Jackson too. So like my question is like what's practical about slashing infrastructure, healthcare, education, and increasing police budgets, and how does that help you fix the issue of paying off debt and encouraging investment? Like how would this issue of half of New Orleans leaving ever be solved if all you're doing is funding the police and you're never ever going to throw money at trying to rebuild? You know?
Okay, well, there's something called like a pyramid of needs. So you have your base needs, and then you have, these other needs at the top, which it's like layers, right? So first you need food, security, then you need infrastructure, then you need, social benefits, things like that. What I'm saying is the reason why New Orleans can't cut its police funding is because crime is already bad. Even in major cities, crime is definitely going to be one of the biggest problems, especially in New Orleans. I have heard it has gone down recently, but that's a whole different rabbit hole. But the statistics, how the FBI plays with that. But crime is already bad in our city. So if we cut the funding on that, I mean, we can't even afford to see the effects that can come with that. With infrastructure, we've been cutting down on infrastructure for a while, and it hasn't had much of a negative effect on our tourism. It hasn't had much of a negative effect on, even people getting to work. And then our healthcare, cutting healthcare doesn't have as much of an impact on our city revenues as cutting policing does. If you cut policing and crime goes up in New Orleans, and New Orleans has a reputation of being a violent city, people aren't going to want to come down here. Tourism is our biggest industry, and if people don't come down here, we're going to lose money, and we lose everything.
So you don't think that healthcare, education, and infrastructure could directly impact like the crime?
Well, it depends, because there are countries that are very poor, but they don't resort to crime. So I don't think healthcare and infrastructure and all these things directly correlate to crime, because New York has far better infrastructure than we do. They still struggle with crime. Washington, D.C., they have very good infrastructure.
In those cities, where do they struggle with crime, though?
I don't know, bro. I couldn't even tell you.
Where the least amount of people have healthcare, where the infrastructure is the worst, and where the education is the worst in every city. Like those things are always directly correlated. If you look at any city, if you look at the area, they'll have, even less access to healthy food. Where the crime is the worst, you'll see the worst outcomes in pretty much every area. There's determinants of crime, but like again, I'm not even like, my thing is like, why do you think that the governments feel like what? I understand you saying like they can't cut the police budget because of crime, but what, like, is there evidence to you that increasing these police budgets has stopped crime? Because the police budgets have increased every year since 2020, and that's what like a lot of politicians campaign on every year since, is that crime's going up, you need to elect me. Like, I'm gonna be tougher on crime, and they give more money to the police. And I don't think we've seen crime go down as a direct result of any of these police budget increases anywhere. I haven't seen it in Houston, Atlanta, New Orleans. So like, why?
Is he frozen for y'all?
Yeah.
Dang, throw off that Wi-Fi.
To further expand upon, yeah, like I think even when we talk about the idea of like defunding the police, there are people who like use that rhetoric and like are just very unserious, right? Like,
in fact,
I mean,
I don't mean to interrupt you. I also want to say I'm not like arguing for the people that you saw saying defund the police in 2020, because like them people are all about but
yeah, like whenever you're talking about destroying something or taking money away from something, there also has to be the inverse effect of like, okay, well, where are we going to redistribute the money, you know? And so I think the biggest piece is, right, for instance, how many times have you had run-ins with the law? You said what?
Zero.
Zero?
Yeah.
Have you always kind of lived in like a decent area?
Nah, not like I do see in
So like, okay, let me reframe this. Have you ever lived in Section 8 housing and like government funded housing?
No.
Okay, that question right there. Have you ever lived in like a shack, like where it's like dilapidated houses all around you, and like there's houses getting set on fire by homeless junkies and shit like that? No? Okay. Have you been to schools where the education, the curriculum is so trash that even the people who graduate in the highest of their class, they don't get accepted into some of the colleges?
No.
Okay. Have you ever gone a night without eating because your folks couldn't financially provide for you? Okay. So, right, do you feel like every person, whether they're white, black, let's just talk about everybody, do you feel like those things are things every human should experience? Like being able to have access to those things you've had access to?
Yeah. Yeah.
Food in your stomach, proper education, like housing that, you're not listening to gunshots every night and you're not having your car put on bricks every night. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Do you feel like that's something that everybody should experience?
Yes.
So by saying that is what a lot of us like who are actually principled and understand things, and don't just do this whole entire like rhetoric chanting stuff. That's what we talk about whenever we talk about defunding the police. It's more not necessarily so much solely focused on the portion of, oh, defund the police, all cops are bad, fuck the police, these niggas are hell. Nah, it's really too like, okay, yes, because we've seen with the influx of investment into policing that the outcomes have only gotten worse. More people have died, more people have gotten incarcerated, more people have got wrongly convicted because of that. So because we know the outcome of the upping of investment in the police, well, let's divest from that and let's invest into things that actually serve people's interests and serve people's rights and their actually feed into their humanity. You know what I'm saying? Because you just told me you had zero run-ins with the law. I would argue that a lot of that has been predicated on the environment that's been created for you, right? Housing, food in your stomach, proper education, and, this whole entire piece on like, oh, well, you could choose your crowd. You've had, I would say, those of us who have had these things, we've had the opportunity to choose our crowd. And it'd be more of a choice, right? You're not getting bullied into a gang. Your whole family's not, thrown to set. You know what I'm saying? You're not, somebody didn't kill your cousin or let me not say that because I have cousins that got killed in gang violence, but somebody didn't kill your like immediate family member to the point where like you're seeking revenge. You know what I'm saying? In a vengeful way. So like those types of things have created this environment where, yeah, I don't need to have run-ins with the law because I'm not in that mode. But when you don't have proper food, I mean, think about the times whenever you don't eat. How does your mind work? Do you get hangry?
Yeah, I feel you. Yeah.
You see what I'm saying? So like whenever you're hungry, whenever you're in a constant feeling of like scarcity, the way you think completely changes. Yeah. And so, yeah, like robbing somebody is of a more rational decision because, like, yeah, shit, you got something I need. I don't got shit right now. I need that. You know what I'm saying? So, like, to us, it's irrational because we don't need to rob somebody to have a decent life. But to somebody who, you know, is fucking bathing in boiled water, you know what I'm saying? Well, shit, how can I really hate on that? Or somebody who grows up around that. They could have running water, but all they partners is not like that. So now they feel like the need to, like, you know, involve themselves in that type of lifestyle, and which then feeds into the over policefication of our communities because it's like, oh, well, yeah, these communities do need to be policed because there's crimes being committed. But I mean, I could say like, at least in terms of my high school portion,
I'll be right back. My dog barking. Hold on.
Very good.
I think.
I think that this is the best sector of the conversation.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah. Yeah.
He made a really good point. I wanted to talk about more too. I just thought about him.
All right, I'm
He
back.
was when he was like,
Go ahead.
okay.
You go.
I'll go.
Yeah.
You made a really good point when you said, I kind of wanted you to expand on it. When you were like, we live in a capitalist economy. Governments have to it has to be profitable for them to invest in it. And I think that's that's why I kept asking, like, why do you think they increase police budgets? Damn, my plant is dying. I need to put some water in there. Yeah, that's why I asked you, like, why do you think they do that? And I think that's that's a really good point that prisons, when we're thinking about profitable, I like to think about profitable for who? Increasing police budgets is profitable for certain people. It's not profitable for all of these politicians' constituents, but it's very profitable for politicians and their donors, people who are invested in the prison industrial complex, people who invest in them, people who want their businesses protected from these lower class people. Capitalist class, people that donate
Or free labor.
Yeah, exactly.
Free prison labor.
A lot of stuff you see in New Orleans parks is built by free prison labor. And yeah, so I think that's a really good point about why these governments choose. So I'm not naive enough to think that the city of New Orleans or the city of Houston will ever defund the police and redistribute the resources. But I'm just I guess I'm just encouraging you to think about why that is, and do you think that's about Cantrell and her lack of care for the city, or is this an institutionalized aspect of American politics that has negative outcomes for Black people? And this is not just New Orleans. This is in every city I've lived in that has a lot of Black people.
So, in our society, right? So, in communist societies, they control the economy directly. They get to choose what businesses go where, why, who lives where. Here, though, the most you can do is incentivize people to move in a certain place. So what these people want is, let's say, for example, this new mayor that we have, forgot his name, Helena Moreno. She talked with the guy in Rouse's because he wouldn't even put any Rouse's in New Orleans East. And she was like, why won't you do that? And he was like, mainly it was the crime. You feel me? So the what people are hoping for, right, or what these politicians really want, is they want to make these areas as investment friendly as possible. We don't live in a country where, I know it's going to sound crazy when I do this, but when you invest in people, it doesn't necessarily mean you'll get the highest return on investment. What people are trying to achieve is, if you bring a business to a certain area, that'll increase the amount of money that area generates, and then you can build upon that. So when we're talking about healthcare, I feel it's like this, right? You put money into healthcare now, but in the long run, will that actually be as profitable as putting money into policing, securing an environment first, having businesses come there, and now you can put money into policing, healthcare, and infrastructure. That's what New Orleans is trying to do right now. We're trying to attract people to the city so that we can make more money, and therefore, now that we have more money, we can build up and we can stunt. Now, if we put money into infrastructure and take money away from policing, okay, the infrastructure will look nicer, but if you have a unsafe city, this is just based, like, if you have an unsafe city but you have good infrastructure, people are still going to look at your city and they're still going to be, well, that city is unsafe. I don't want to put my businesses there. And you have some businesses that have shut down due to crime. If you look at New York, or matter of fact, even with these riots, right? Like Chicago, they have like city takeovers every now and then. If you have high crime in certain areas, the businesses in these areas are going to choose to withdraw. And if all the commerce leaves your area, well, you're left with nothing. You're left with no policing, no infrastructure. You're left with no healthcare. You're left with no benefits because there is no commerce in your immediate area. So that's why I would support, especially like at this time, if resources are tight, I do think policing is the most important priority because you need to bring businesses there before you build upon that. And also, I do want to say this. If you put all of your resources into healthcare as opposed to policing, well, you're still taking a gamble because there are still people in white-collar communities who commit crime despite having access to healthcare, infrastructure. It's not a guarantee that if you give people better resources, they will choose better. There will be people who still choose to do wrong. And you could see that, yeah, that's pretty much all I want to say, yeah.
So you don't think that crime is a direct, like there isn't any direct correlation from like resources and your environment and different things like that?
It's a factor, but there are also factors at play as well, like culture. Sometimes, like there are countries in the world who have nothing; they're dirt poor, but they still have an extremely low crime rate. That's because they've been raised not to commit crime, or it's just in their culture to not commit crime and to not screw somebody else over. And there are, like I said before, there are white collar communities in America that engage in crime still, even though they don't, even though they have all of these benefits, all these healthcare benefits and all things like that. There are people in the suburbs who still kill each other out of hatred at the end of the day. And there's still people who are rich who still engage in crime, but they're able to mask it more and not be as direct because they have the money to not do that. So I'm just saying, it's more of a gamble.
So question, right? Like when we talk about investing into the police, do you think that means the rich communities are getting policed more? Like what areas do you think are getting more police? Whenever we talk about, like where does policing predominantly happen?
Areas with higher crime.
Which are areas
Let's be more specific.
Areas of color with blacks, yes.
Okay.
Even more specific than like impoverished areas.
Yeah,
so question. So, right, if I were to watch your every move every single day, do you feel like you're like this perfect human being, or do you procrastinate sometimes? Do you fall short of, the glory of God sometimes? Do you make mistakes sometimes? Have you ever ran a stop sign? Have you ever, made a illegal turn or something like that? Have you ever done those things?
Well, as far as driving, yeah.
Are you going out with us?
Well, yeah, I have, yeah.
Dang. Bro, frozen.
Bro, Wi-Fi cooked.
I feel like Zoom is more laggy than FaceTime.
Shit, I agree, okay.
Yeah, probably.
Yeah, I agree. I want him to finish his question, but he I had some thoughts like while he was talking. Okay, he'll come back. But just thinking about what he was saying, like what you said too. Like there's white people, you didn't say white people. There's middle upper class people, communities that like still do crime, still participate white collar crime. The politicians commit crime. I think that's like a really good point. In my personal experience, I grew up around nothing but I didn't grow up around nothing but I went to school with nothing but white people, and there was a lot of criminal activity, drugs. People sell drugs. People do drugs. People. I mean, and these are like millionaire white people. People playing with guns. People, all type of stuff. And there was never once any legal repercussion for anything that any of them ever dealt with. Whereas, like what he's saying, in a community that is over policed, kids are going to jail at 12, 13, 14, 15 years old for the same things that people in wealthier communities don't go to jail for. They might get they don't even get suspended. Like there's not even the same carceral modes of schooling. Like you don't get the alternative school, all these different things. You don't have to go to school walking through metal detectors, etc. But still, like I also like the way you positioned it with the policing and healthcare. Like if you throw money at infrastructure and healthcare now, in the long term, like would that be better for investment? And I feel like I think I view it the opposite way. I think the police, like investing in the police now, is more of a short term solution to crime. I think that's addressing something that's already existing, and you're criminalizing it. Like you're not going to the root, and that would take a much longer time, and it would have more long term results in terms of outcomes. Because, like I'm saying, every single year since 2020, all of these police budgets, Chicago, New York, like some of these cities that you're naming, these police budgets have gotten $1 billion increases. And the crime, there's no evidence that the crime is going down or that they're harnessing the crime. Like these areas that you're talking about that are bad for investment are still bad for investment post these police increases in budget. And so I think like the more we see that, we have to think about what are actual solutions. Like what would be a long-term solution? What would actually change this area, this community long term? And to me, I'm not seeing it as policing. I see policing as a short-term answer to like individuals committing crime. We're gonna arrest these people, and the crime rates don't go down. Not in direct response to these police budget increases. You were right. I think crime rates are technically down right now. But yeah, I'm like looking for like where the evidence is that the policing actually. Well, I think you also did make a good point that they're making it better for investment, and this is what I mean by like the police exist for like they're serving a certain class. Like, who are we talking about investment? What businesses? They're protecting certain businesses to open up in the community. The investment is not for this community to have more money in the long run. It's for certain corporations to be able to profit in these communities. Like you're talking about Rouse's and stuff. But I would also argue, though, that like it would even be more profitable for them to invest in like better material outcomes for these communities. Because, for example, a lot of people say that like the Middle Eastern or the Indian man is a good example for Black people to look at because they come into our communities and they start businesses and they make the money that that we're spending at the gas stations, at the whatever. But these businesses, these small businesses that aren't corporations that exist within Black communities. There's this guy named Dr. Jared Ball. He's done some research on this. He's shown how these businesses don't make a lot of money because they're in poor communities. Like investing in better outcomes for people will increase returns for businesses. But for the corporation, they're not concerned with this specific community, their outcomes being materially changed because they're a corporation. They can put a Rouse's wherever. They can put a Rouse's in Kenner. The Rouse's in Kenner. Their bottom line isn't necessarily impacted by if they open one in the East or not, if I'm making sense. But I think you made a really good point that like the police are there to protect certain investments, a certain class, and to ensure that like those businesses are safe to exist. Not necessarily to ensure that the community is safe, but to ensure that like this investment is protected.
And say that was
that's for a certain class.
say that was also a long-term solution, like for like what they're meaning it. I mean, I'm sorry. Say that was a long-term solution for like the businesses that they're doing it for. Like, then what though? Like what we're talking about, you're saying that they're investing so they can stop crime, but this isn't actually directly benefiting like the lowest class. So on a long-term spectrum, like what happens with the lower class? Like they just continue to fight the same struggle.
So here's the thing, and I'll say this at next, right? The main thing is if you have more businesses in a certain area, let's say you have a poor area. If you put a business in that poor area, that creates two things. That creates job and higher tax revenue. So if you have a business that is there and they hire people and then people shop from that business, that increases the overall wealth of the community. So yes, while I do think businesses are primarily served by the policing, I do think overall that the community is generally made wealthier by these businesses that are there. Because if you really like look at New York or California, some of these new places that have like Silicon Valley or all these things, these are primarily hubs of businesses where high skilled people and businesses meet together to make even more money. And you even look at this around the world, like let's say Japan. The reason why Japan became so wealthy and became such a strong technology centered economy was because they started businesses there and they started funding businesses that were able to produce high quality technology to sell to the world. And even in South Korea and China, the only reason why they are rich right now is because they have businesses and industry that can support the investments of these foreign, from the Americans, right? We send our factories there because we know, okay, they have the infrastructure to even support factories, and they're secure, and they're not going to have a revolution, and they're cheaper. So what I'm saying is, in the United States,
Do you think they did that by policing though? Increasing
Japan?
police? Yeah.
Yeah, to a certain extent. Like, there's a reason. I'll say it like this: there's a reason we don't send our factories to Brazil as much as we do China, because there's lower crime rates in China and in Asia as a whole compared to South America. Africa, it's a whole different thing. You have high crime rates. I mean, you can't even trust the government because they might get overthrown the next week. And then on top of that, you barely have any infrastructure there. So, this is the basis of wealth in our our age right now. If you have a poor community and you put a business there, then that's going to raise the property value. So everybody who's living there, their area is going to be worth more because they have jobs, and then they have places where they can buy things from. And when the value goes up, you're going to attract another business, which is going to create even more jobs, and it's going to increase the tax revenue of that general area. This is how you build wealth, across the world. That's how they did it from scratch. So, that's the main thing, really. And if you want, there are people, let's say you have 50 working class people, and they come together, they can start their own business and benefit their own community. It'll have to be organized, but it is something that is possible to do. Word. So that's why. And also, I want the end goal, because when you have one business and then you attract more businesses, and that increases the wealth of that area, now you're able to do more things with that money to reinvest into healthcare, and then to reinvest into infrastructure, and just continue to increase the value of your property. That's what happened in a lot of these countries that are threatening America's global dominance right now.
Yeah. I I think that Imari's question was a really good question. Do you think they did that through policing? Like China, for example, I know more about China than I do Japan's history, but you also have to consider like Japan's imperial history, like playing a factor into their status. But I would say like China, I think, and you use Africa as an example. There's like many examples, and even Brazil and some other South American countries where their police forces are extremely militarized, and they give more money to the police too. Like a lot of their budget increases are going to the police, and this isn't reducing crime. El Salvador, that's one of like they're constantly increasing their police budget and prison budget, and crime isn't actually going down. More people are going to jail, but there's still as much gang violence and crime as before. But China, I don't think that China achieved like their status through policing people. Like I think that there were major social and structural transformations. Wow. Yeah, like they have a police force, but their police budget isn't the same as the United States' or military budget. But yeah, I don't think that any of these countries have like achieved it. Like there were structural changes made, redistributions of wealth, universal healthcare. That was like the first thing they implemented in China. Education, literacy rates increasing. Literacy has a direct link to crime as well. Literacy rates, wherever the lowest literacy rates are, that's where poverty would be. Crime would be the highest. And like these are things that like the Chinese Revolution, whether you liked Mao or not, the Chinese Communist Party is still a thing, and they're still, even though they shifted to like the free market, to opening up their markets, opening themselves up to the global market, they're still committed to the Chinese Communist Party. Like that's their goal is essentially the same thing. Like they have a plan to achieve communism by a certain point. But there was also another point that you made about like San Francisco being like a hub, and New York being like a hub of like finance, business, and wealth. These are also cities, though, that have some of the highest wealth gaps. Like where it exists, these billionaires in Silicon Valley, you can go to Oakland, across the bridge, and it's some of the worst outcomes that you'll ever see for Black people. In New York, if you go to the Bronx, if you go to Harlem, it's the same. These same outcomes are happening, even though there exists this business class that is globally renowned and a center. It's a center for the American economy. Like it's these things hold up the American economy, but what does it mean for lower class people? And I mean, if you're concerned with as an individual, like getting into that class, I mean, that's something that's possible. But is it possible for you getting into that class and you and a couple of friends starting a business and elevating your business to that class? Is it possible for that to change the material realities for all the poor people? Like, I think this lower class, like, kind of has to exist. And you see that under like the current system that we live in America. It's a difference where in China, innovation led to better outcomes for the masses of their people. They eliminated absolute poverty. Even though there's still a lot of poor people and there's billionaires in China, there's still huge wealth gaps. They have a different commitment to the people. They want to use the resources to improve the lives of every Chinese citizen. Whereas in San Francisco, Silicon Valley explodes and Black people get poorer. Like I think it's a difference of values and systems, not necessarily police, and that's why they have to fund police to like quell that. Yeah.
Well, I still think because in China, you still have like a wealth gap per se in China, and it's even more radical in China because in some areas the standard of living is so low. It's literally like they're in a very rural environment, In America, it's not exactly the same way. I would just say it like this, and even El Salvador, because I looked it up, and their crime rate had a 98% decrease from 2015.
Yeah, I don't believe that at all. Like that sounds self-reported by the president. Like a 98% decrease, I don't believe that at all. But I mean we could go with that. El Salvador is not the only example. There's other South American countries and African countries. Like I was just in Ghana and Egypt. Like they have military everywhere. They're heavily policed. but it doesn't mean anything for them to be able to industrialize, like the things that you were talking about. It doesn't mean anything for them to be able to industrialize, to give their people education, to build infrastructure. It has no material impact on that. All it has is an impact on people's ability to either resist or to, it's just policing the people from partaking in like certain things, essentially.
Well,
I don't think there's any impact on.
I would say in China, and I'll say like in this, right? China also, like there's a cultural aspect to it as well. So I would say that there are multiple different factors that impact crime. And the main difference with China is they have, one, a different culture, two, they have better corruption control, even though they are a very authoritarian country that serve their elites. They still have a very tight grip on corruption, better than the United States in some aspects. And, really the better, and I'll say it like this, right? China and Japan and South Korea and all these different countries that managed to industrialize, still the first step was establishing control. At the end of the day, they still needed a military force to get what they did done. And if you look at Brazil, I would say the biggest difference that happens with Brazil is, one, is it's the culture, because they have a different culture than Chinese people have. And then on top of that, you have higher corruption with the police. And then also, let's not forget that in cities, they're pretty much by design meant for huge wealth gaps. I mean, it's pretty much a economic hub where everybody can go to find a job and to employ people, right? So, I don't know. Like, I feel like wealth gaps, especially in capitalist countries, they're intrinsic to how cities are, like what cities are. They're meant to be this big area where everybody's just clumped together. And that plays a big factor with crime, because there's so many targets who are much more wealthier than you that you could just, rob, essentially. So, yeah, what I'm saying is, at the end of the day, like, even though in China the aspect of policing isn't as highlighted as you think it is, I'm telling you, like, China still made heavy use of their military. They still had a secret police, the CIA force that was listening, all this stuff. And then they have like a civilian police force. And they were able to pour money into other things as well. So I'm not sure. And also, China did have a tighter grip on their economy as far as like their government. They had a communist country. So they can just say, all right, I'm going to forcibly remove you from your area, and you're going to go in a city and you're going to work in a factory. They could do that. We can't really do that in America. Also, I forgot to hit on this point. Remember this. African Americans, historically have lived in cities, especially in the Great Migration, where we moved from the South to these industrial hubs. But when in the 1970s, when globalism happened and we started outsourcing these jobs to foreign countries, black people suffered the most because they had the least amount of education and they had a very high concentration of people in these city areas, in these economic hubs. And they were pretty much left without a job. So I do think that is an important factor to consider as well, because I do feel like black people were affected by this way more than other racial groups.
I completely agree. And I think that's a direct result of policy and investment into, you just said the education levels. We were educated to work the jobs that were outsourced. And still to this day, we're educated to work jobs that will be cut first. The jobs that are getting replaced by AI right now at Amazon, those are black people. It's working class people, lower class people working these jobs. And that's what we're talking about. Like this, if that standard is changed for education, that is a long-term solution to like black people's ability to equally access an economy. But I agree with you. Like, it's intrinsic to capitalism. So I'm not naive enough to think that like the United States is going to do that, or like the United States government is going to do that unless it's profitable for the people who like run the United States. But with China, oh yeah, like the class stratification, like high classes in the U.S. being like intrinsic to it. With China, the same thing. Like you said, there's billionaires, there's police, but they've never addressed any issue of class. Like the police in China, like they're tougher on like billionaires. I don't know if you know like about like billionaires getting imprisoned in China and etc. like executed and stuff. The issue of like you said like here there's always going to be that contradiction where you're in these hubs of cities where there's the super wealthy and then there's the super poor, and there's always going to be that element where the poor want to rob the rich because they have more than them and they're in proximity. The U.S. addresses that issue by like enlisting the police force to essentially be the wealthy's like security force to protect their property and to arrest anyone that threatens it. Whereas China, that's not how they address the issue. They made structural changes to education, literacy, and you're talking about the rural areas. I can send you a documentary about how China eliminated absolute poverty. And absolute poverty is like very low. It doesn't mean that they got everybody like living good, but they got them above the internationally recognized level of absolute poverty by the UN. And they're the first country to ever do this. To lift that many people out of absolute poverty, I don't know how many millions of people they lifted out of absolute poverty, but the documentary will tell you. They did it by like by using government funds and forces, state officials, to go to the rural areas and assess the situation and make material changes to their education, to their healthcare, to all of their socioeconomic factors that like impacted their life. They didn't address it by we're going to send more police there to make sure that you can't rob people with more money than you. And like the police in China, I agree that police are absolutely necessary for any nation state to enforce and to like limit any like type of resistance or revolution. Every country, every government is going to do that. It's going to be invested in that. But my thing is, the United States' budget and each city's budget, like New York you're talking about, has a higher police budget than most countries have military budgets. Like their budget is bigger than most countries' military budgets, and that's one city. The amount of money that the United States spends on not only the military but local police, state police, federal police, there's not much of a comparison internationally, and this is our response to every issue that we've been talking about, like to these higher levels of crime, and it hasn't shown any results, in my opinion. There was one more thing that you said I want to talk about. I think I said what I wanted to say. I think it has a lot to do with like I think you're right. Just I don't think that America has the same values, like you said, the culture difference with China. I think China is like more invested in the well-being of all of their people, whereas the United States government is not. And either like you can accept that reality and like move as an individual, or you can accept that reality and think about ways that like we can like collectively like build for self-determination in spite of like our government not wanting to like not having our well-being collectively like in mind. Like I think, yeah. Am I making sense? Like, because I feel like you've accepted the fact that like this is intrinsic to capitalism. Like, there's going to be lower classes, and I've accepted that too. But like where I think is just like, how can we like collectively like make something better of this in spite of like the forces that are working against this kind of thing?
Well, I think that in a human society, I think there's definitely going to be people who have more and have less, because people are going to feel like they want to be compensated. They want more. People are greedy. And with the China, right, the main cultural difference that we have is pretty much, as an individual, let's say like when you bring a Chinese immigrant to the United States, them compared to the average American citizen, their mentality towards education, their mentality towards finding a skill and perfecting it is completely different to how Americans approach things, right? I mean, Chinese people come over here, they have that mentality. Okay, I want to have a skill. They go to college and they're literally trying to outperform everybody else when it comes to that skill. That's why we have such high competition amongst college graduates, because you have all these immigrants that have a tougher mentality on education than we do, and a different work ethic. I also want to say that I forgot. Wow, I can't believe there's a different living conditions for immigrants compared to American citizens. People who are natively born in America typically don't stick with their family as much as immigrants do. Hispanic people, I had Hispanic immigrants that came in across my street a few years ago, and there was like 3 or 4 families there. They all lived together, and they all worked under the same roof. And if you look at the average American, we don't have that same mentality. But if you really think about it, that really is like the most meta way to accumulate wealth as a family, to stick together, to keep your costs low. And then when you have enough money, you move up to a different household income class. Also, where was I going with this? Wow, that's great. I think I've been talking for too long. Yeah, but that's great. And also, how do we tackle this as living in America? I really think the best way we can do this, because I know people aren't going to live with each other, but also encourage more collaboration among poor people. Because at the end of the day, poor people do have welfare benefits. They do, even if you're working for minimum wage, you still have enough money if you collaborate with enough people to really start something together. And you can't really do that in most other countries, but in America you can. You can collaborate with the people in your neighborhood, and if it's organized enough, you can have a working business where people can have equity in something and own something and incrementally build wealth while keeping the cost low.
Yeah, I definitely agree with like more collaboration. Shit, like that's my motto. Like amongst Black people in general, like we need to work together more, organize something, or whatever that may be. But I would say like there's this ultimately going to be like severe limitations when poor people are putting money together. There's like Dr. Jared Ball wrote this book called The Myth and Propaganda of Black Buying Power, and he deals with like a lot of with the idea of Black buying power, and he deals with like the actual reality, what the data says about like where Black people are materially, economically. And he's the one I got that stat from about we had more Black millionaires than ever in 2019, and the national capture of the Black capture of national wealth went down, and it's actually headed to zero, even though we have more Black millionaires and billionaires every year. Like the trend is steadily going down. But he deals with like a lot of the limitations of that, like worker co-ops, like kind of something that you were describing, like starting a business with people in your neighborhood. I think these things are like all good ideas. Like we need to, like, I guess in the immediate, the number one thing we have to do is work together. But ultimately, whereas if we're going to use China as an example again, like things will never like structurally like change or like will change for the masses unless there are structural changes, unless like political power is seized in some form or facet to direct policy, because policy has so much to do with economics. The businesses that are allowed to become a monopoly, they have government backing. They, like that's not detached from the government at all. And like you see that with how Trump is moving, like with his, he put how many billionaires in his cabinet? He had every AI and social media billionaire at his inauguration. Like these, and Democrats are the same. Like Democrats are very much tied in with all the financial elites as well. So like there's just ultimately limitations, I would say, to that. But I agree with the collaboration. There was something you said before that though. I can't remember what it was. What the first point was.
Just about, I think it was the same, how the immigrants come here.
Oh, yeah. Damn.
How they work harder
Yeah, how they
Oh,
work,
the
stick
cultural
together
thing.
as a family too.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. That was a great point. I completely agree with that. Like, especially China. But then again, my argument for culture is that I don't think anybody's culture, uh, was created in a vacuum, and was neither created in a vacuum nor uh, completely pure. Every culture has like changed, evolved, been impacted by interaction with other cultures, and been impacted by the systemic and material conditions, like wherever they live. That's like what produces culture to me. So like for me, if we were to change black culture, a lot of things have to go into that. And black culture has changed, like you were talking about, like we've talked about since the '60s. Black culture has changed, and like you can't pinpoint that to certain individuals just starting to move different. There's material differences in our outcomes. Like there's material things that are different, and that's what shapes culture to me. So like thinking about China and the Chinese immigrant coming over here, the culture that they grew up in was shaped by the capture of political power. To me, like their material conditions, the way that they interacted with. So, for example, like we're talking about the century of humiliation. We were talking about that earlier. That culture is completely different than the Chinese culture today. Like what the Chinese immigrant views as his potential. Like when the opium wars were happening, like we're basically talking about like how we're talking about black people in lower income communities now. Like it's drugs, it's drugs, addiction, crime, all of that. That was the totality of Chinese culture. But there were shifts in the political and economic like situation that helped shift and shape this culture that they have now today, which is a proud, family-oriented, communal culture. And that's like enforced in different government structures. I don't think it exists just out of the vacuum. Like the Chinese people are just inherently communal, and like it's the same thing with Africa. Like there's been like communal aspects in Africa for thousands of years, but currently it's like there's still so much of the communal aspects, but individualism shapes a lot of the culture as well, and that's because of like the economic and political situation. Whereas in America, the economic political situation is predicated on individualism. So that's why the Chinese citizen comes over here with a completely different aspect and outlook on life. And this isn't just black people. Like I think that's American culture, not black American culture. Individualism, that's like the tenets of neoliberalism. Like that's one of the key tenets. And neoliberalism is not a Democrat or Republican thing. It's like the guiding ideology. It's like that's what both parties subscribe to, and that's what the majority of American people subscribe to is individualism, and that benefits a certain class of people. It doesn't benefit working masses. It benefits the capitalist class, who benefits from individualism, who like if they can get everyone to believe that you as an individual can get to my position rather than y'all working together to like seize my position kind of thing. That's what they want. Like everyone to view themselves as individuals, detached from even their family, but especially the larger black community. Because I mean, in America, we black people will be with our family, but like once we get beyond that, it's like that kind of culture that kind of culture is ingrained in us. That didn't pop up out of nowhere. Because like we were talking about, that wasn't necessarily the culture in the '60s, and that had to do with because more of them were experiencing like a similar socioeconomic situation. Whereas now we have more class stratification, more black billionaires, millionaires, more access to that, more imagery of it. We see it all the time, black individuals being successful. All these things shape culture to me.
Yeah,
and, yeah I think I'm talking to me.
Yeah, Michael, I feel like we both have kind of experienced that, like family members getting money and it's kind of like, oh, they're off to the side, like Keisha, Cornell, they're on their own timing. They're kind of ducked off like in the corner, and it's not like a family thing because we're not experiencing the same struggle anymore. And it's like, yeah, they feel that they are different.
Yeah, I experienced it personally. Like you might not recognize it, but even I feel like I was even talking to my dad last time I was in New Orleans. He was telling me about like family reunions that they have. I'd never been to one. And he was basically saying how my grandfather kind of cut ties with most of his family, and my dad don't really like rock with most of them. And it just makes me think about like since like my dad's side of the family was like impoverished pretty much up until my grandfather, until he was an adult. And so, yeah, my dad was born into poverty. So like around like like my dad was like a teenager, they started this ascent to middle class. But I feel like I know that transition to middle class from living in Holly Grove, like it has separated them from their larger community. It gets more and more from like even extended family to like my individual household. Like my family is like the people I live with is who matter. I don't care about whatever your auntie or whatever. Like that's not my problem. Like it gets more and more like that. The more that class like stratification and like that ascent happens. And that's anecdotal, like that's your personal experience, It's some people who get money and still be with their people, but that is like the culture of America, though. And it's even like predicated on like the nuclear family model. Like that's who you're responsible for is your wife, the kids. Like that's a part of American values, and that Black people, I feel like, have taken that on to our detriment because we don't have a similar situation to white people whatsoever. Yeah, I mean, and we've talked about like white people. There's poor white people too, but I feel like a lot of Americans like take that on to their detriment. This individualism, this like very hyper focused on like the nuclear family, not worried about the larger community.
It's also taught like
it's taught.
I'm sure like if I obtain wealth, my mom would tell me, "Oh, you probably don't want to go over there because they might be asking you, like that's a taught thing. Like it's not just like it's not just random." And I think like even with that being said, it's like I think that's another kind of example of like how even if it is true, like there's more Black millionaires, how that doesn't benefit like the entire community.
Yeah. That was like the most striking step for me, was seeing like the increase in Black millionaires, people. Because like to me for a while, like I remember, I don't know who the first Black billionaire was. Was it Oprah? Nah, but one of them. Like I just remember when new Black billionaires are getting announced, like that was huge for me. I was like, wow, like this is like things that are shifting. Like a Black man is a billionaire, a Black woman is a billionaire. But I mean, we have a lot more now than we did when the first one came out, and the gaps, the material outcomes in these communities that we talking about have just like have not changed. And I think it's a good thing, like what you said, like poor people need to like work together. I completely agree with that. But just like larger, like Black people need to work together. Like, but I'm not naive to think that like, I mean, it's in your own self-interest when you get to a certain class status, like to leave everybody behind. So I'm not naive enough to like think that we're gonna convince, because like white people don't do that. Like white people, like rich white people are not like supporting Black people. Like they leaving people behind too. But it works for them because like their status in this country was like, but it doesn't work for the poor whites. But like I'm not naive enough to think that like rich Black people will like be like a solution or help necessarily. But I just do think like it's really important what you said, like the working together in communal efforts and whatever we're trying to do, whether it's a business, starting a political organization, whatever it is, like growing food, self-defense groups, whatever it is, like we have to just think more about like our larger community.
Like I definitely feel like if political power is tied to money and tied to businesses, I do think, I'm not sure if it's been done before, but I do think like poor Black communities, it would be in their interest to come together and form their own markets and like, collectively. I do think that can work. But also building upon like the whole, because there's always this idea that, oh man, when I get money, oh look, now they coming back, now they asking for all my stuff. I got motion now. Or even this whole other thing where it's like, oh, if you want to be a millionaire, they're going to be rubber bands that's holding you back, and you gotta cut them off. Like, bro, not really thinking about that. It's just like, man,
It's ruthless, yeah.
Yeah, it's ruthless. It's like,
Yeah.
wow, y'all care about money that much to be cutting people off. It's just like, man, we really gotta abandon that whole mentality. But yeah, I do think, and that is something I want to do. You know, like go to lower income communities and see if it's even possible to have them work together on a business or on, an area that doesn't have much commerce at all. Would that even improve their situation? You feel me? But yeah.
Yeah, it definitely would. I think it's I'm gonna say one of this last thing.
Yeah.
I think that not only just like economically, education, infrastructure, I think that like it would be a disservice if we didn't address like the psychological things that come with poverty and how like it's we should understand more like how it's harder for impoverished black people not to work together, like just because all the psychological things that like come with being impoverished in America.
Yeah.
That point, that's like a huge factor, especially for like someone in my class status. I've never been in poverty one day in my life. But just think about being hangry, like the concept of being hangry. Like imagine living hangry, like from your youth. Like what does that mean for like you trying to live a good life? Like what does that mean for you? Like your ability to avoid crime. Like that we always gotta consider like there's psychological impacts of everything. We gotta consider our own like the things that we've been impacted by. But what did you say? You'd like to? Oh, I wanted to ask you. Yeah, what like are you in school? I see the UNO. You at UNO? Mm-hmm. That's where you go. Okay, what do you study?
Finance.
Okay, you study finance. So yeah, like that's something that you view as like a goal, like for your service to your community with your work is like trying to like work with like some economic cooperatives or something in like a lower income community to try to like in the future kind of thing. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, not even co-op, probably just with the people itself. Because I do feel like when you work with some of these nonprofits and stuff, money disappears.
Oh, that's for sure.
Yeah, I do feel like the whole government approach, and I don't think like the government or even what we do is gonna make the situation perfect. I think people aren't perfect, but I do think it might be more efficient to have because some people just don't even it never crosses their mind. You feel me? I don't know. Like sometimes I'll just be talking to people, and it'll never cross their mind. Like, hey, why don't you do this? Because usually with this culture, we have this whole thing of, oh, play sports, you might make it out, or do music, or if you don't have those gifts, then go to crime or do something else. And it's just I mean,
it's a lottery ticket. Like it's not much things where you could be like, oh, I can do this because I've seen it happen before. So it's like a lot of times you get in a position to just wish on a star, and like that could just be like preying on your little cousin or your son to make it to the league.
I mean, that's literally what it is, though. Like that's the reality. Like we're saying these wealth gaps are intrinsic to this like to capitalism. Like there has to be these people down here, and like I think a lot of poor black people like recognize like because there's another thing. I mean, a common narrative is that they don't work hard. But like you were talking about earlier, we lost a lot of black people lost jobs to globalization because it was the jobs that could get outsourced. And again, like currently, the jobs that are getting cut to AI or whatever are the jobs that black people are working. But black people are working very hard at these jobs. Like black people, like a lot of like I know some black mom that works a lot of hours and is one of the poorest people that you know and has worked a lot of hours for her whole life. Where was I going with this? But yeah, like a lot of black people like in those circumstances recognize like this is the limit. Like there is nothing else besides if they son come out and make it in rap or football. Like they realize that's a reality. Like it's not like a lack of self-esteem. Because it's legitimately the reality. Some people have to be down here, and this segment of the population has been down here since slavery, which is what this country was founded on, like the very basis of its economy. Y'all were not a part, like y'all were we've always been like workers and producers in the economy, not necessarily benefactors. And like, I mean, that the same like class structure has maintained, although we're not under slavery, we do have economic access in some form. But like for a large portion of our community, the reality is they have a lottery ticket or they have minimum wage jobs with bad or no healthcare, bad or no education for them and their families. And that's like a determinant of crime, like we were talking about. But that's just also, that's something we have to recognize. We have to have empathy, I feel like, for our people, like in that way, especially like if we haven't like experienced this ourselves. Like that's what I always think about. Like when I started working, I worked at Dollar Tree. I was getting minimum wage, and like I just had to work because my parents wanted me to work while I was in school, but I didn't have to work. And then paychecks literally like were like I couldn't do anything in my own fun personal life that I wanted to do, and I was working with these people, all these black people that have kids, and they're actually like supporting families, trying to support families, them and their partners or whatever, with this money, and I just couldn't even imagine. I couldn't use this money to feed myself and have fun with my friends for like a week. So yeah, just thinking about that, we gotta have empathy for our people, try to like learn from their experiences, hear their experiences, and yeah, I guess like from our class status, whatever it may be, like try to work with our people to help our people. That's just how I view it.
Yeah. Well, it seemed like we wrapping it up right now.
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. This is a good, damn, how long we talking? 2 hours?
2 yeah.
2.5. Dang.
Yeah, wait, so what year are you at UNL?
This is my freshman year. So,
okay. Where did you go to high school?
Yeah, I went to Lycée Français. It's a French immersion school.
You said what?
It's a French immersion school in New Orleans.
Okay, what's it called?
Lycée Français.
So you speak French?
Yeah, I do.
Fire. That's super fire. Now I was just curious, though. That's fire. Hey, you like UNL?
Yeah, so I might transfer out, depending on these scholarships.
Okay. Where are you thinking?
Maybe Loyola, or maybe out of state.
Gotcha.
But yeah.
Gotcha. For sure. Well, yeah, this was a good combo.
Yeah, very conversation.
Yeah,
we're gonna have to do like maybe like quarterly check-ins, have these conversations.
Yeah, bro. We might even, we could come together and maybe, I don't know, try to start something.
Like what, bro?
I don't know. Maybe because like, I don't know, like maybe with I don't know how people will even like respond to this, but helping some black people organize themselves and starting a business. Just seeing how that will work out. I'm very curious to see how that will work out. But yeah.
Yeah. Sure.
Cool. All right, y'all. I'm gonna catch y'all.
All right, bro. All right. See y'all. Thank you, Amari. Thank you, bro.
No problem.
All right.
Yeah, we said, have a good one.
All right. You have a good one. Shoot, man. All right, chat. My zero people who watched. I'm about to head out. That was long, bro. That was longer than I thought it was gonna be. Pause. But very very long conversation. Came to some conclusion. But yeah. All right, guys. Thank you. If you're maybe watching the VOD, thank you. Just thank you for even just looking at this. I really should make more videos. I have a new PC, so that might encourage me. So yeah,